Welcome to Art Beat, Canada's Art Pulse. I'm your host, Katie. Today, we're joined by Chloe Chlumecky, a figurative oil painter who captures the essence of life's fleeting moments. Chloe's artwork serves as a window to the everyday, transforming quiet observations into meaningful expressions. She'll share her journey of artistic growth, from her inspirations to the tactile process of oil painting and her experiences that shape her vision. Get ready to explore how Chloe makes the ordinary extraordinary. Tune in to uncover the depth of her work and the stories that paint her path. Chloe, hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
So, Chloe, I'd like to start talking about what inspires your artwork. And I'm wondering, how do the subtle, everyday moments, where does that inspiration come from? And why do you think they hold so much significance?
Well, I think being in my 20s, my early 20s, I'm 24, I feel like I'm at a very pivotal point in my life. I just graduated like a couple of years ago. I really feel like I'm starting to grow up and move out. I went to university in my hometown where I live in Windsor, so I never really had to move out for university. And so I'm finally kind of just at that point in my life where I'm growing up and entering the workforce. And I feel like capturing moments through my painting in a way that almost feels like documentation is like moments worth remembering as I'm growing up. I'm generally like a very anxious person. So I'm always worrying about the future and where I'm going to be in the next, I don't know where I'm going to be in 5 years.
You and us
always
all.
worrying about, I'm sure everyone, feels that way. But painting really helps keep me in the moment, and it keeps me practicing gratitude for little things. When I feel very overwhelmed or like my ego gets in the way and, I don't really know what I'm doing, it helps ground me with the things that are really most important in life, I feel, and kind of helps me feel better. Like, my family, my friends, being in nature, daily experiences, because I think that the things that we do daily are the things that really make up our life. So those are things that we should pay attention to. Little moments that just bring joy, like keeping my eye out for those kinds of things really help me from spiraling into a sort of like existential dread. So I think it's just almost very calming. And, I want other people to feel calm when they look at my art, or feel like they can kind of step into a little moment in time. So, yeah.
So talking about grounding, how does being present and focusing on the now shape your approach to creativity and your time in the studio?
Well, I feel like I always have so much going on in my studio. I always have many paintings on the go. I always have my phone out. I'm taking pictures of everything because I don't really stage reference photos. It's just kind of like my iPhone is almost like my sketchbook. I'm kind of taking photos of everything I see, different angles. So I always have so much material to work from. And I feel like I have to kind of separate them into little categories based on what collections I'm building at the time or what I want to focus on specifically for a body of work. But yeah, I always have an ongoing folder of things that I want to paint in the future. And I feel like I love to paint big paintings, but sometimes when I'm feeling very overwhelmed or anxious, I feel like getting into the studio and painting something really small, like a 5x7 or like an 8x10, with that grounding a lot, because it's kind of just like capturing one moment right then and there, and one moment in time. It feels very refreshing to get to do that if I feel overwhelmed. So I kind of always just have a lot going on in the studio.
Your work often features a strong narrative component, especially being still life. I'm curious to know, what does the process of infusing, let's say, lived in energy into the inanimate objects look like for you?
Yeah, well, I feel like it's very important for me to always have like a human essence in every painting, even if there's not an actual figure in the painting or an actual human, but I always want everything to feel, I want it to feel lived in. I want it to feel real. I don't want it to feel like it's something I set up. So for example, like most of my still life paintings are just things that were kind of already existing in the world. And I just, framed it, in my own kind of way or adjusted the composition a little bit, but it's kind of just already naturally got a human element to it because I don't really alter it in any way. One of my paintings that I did that I really liked last year, it was just a small 12 by 12 inch painting, but it was a picture that I had taken of my back door at my house. And it was kind of where we had dumped all of our recyclables for my dad to bring out when it's recycle day. And so it was kind of just a mismatch of objects. It was like pizza boxes and then a garbage bag on top of those pizza boxes. There were some beer and wine bottles, a box of like K-cup coffee pod, and then like a vase of half-dead flowers that needed to be thrown out. But it was kind of just this perfect, I remember I was walking past it and I was like, this feels like a perfect kind of, almost like the Dutch still life composition. So I just took a photo and I'm like, this is a little weird to paint. It's garbage, but it kind of worked for me. And it just felt really like candid. So yeah, I think it's really just kind of capturing things that already exist in the world and I just alter them a little bit.
What did painting that moment mean to you?
I think it like captures a little bit just of me living at home right now, I guess. For me, I'm living at home still with my parents and I'm very close with my family. So I think whenever I look at that painting, I just will probably remember this time in my life and living at home. And I don't know, it just kind of reminds me of my daily routines being here. And one day when I won't be living here, that'll remind me of it.
And so speaking of being at home, but you spent some time in France having a residency there. So that was a bit of time away from home.
Yes.
So I would like if you could reflect on your time in France for us and tell us, what were some of the key takeaways from your residency that have impacted your art?
Yeah, I mean, I visited the Chateau Orquiveau artist residency in France. I was there for 2 weeks. It was one of the most rewarding experiences I think I've ever done. It was terrifying to leave home.
I bet.
And for the first time, I mean, not for the first time, like I've been overseas before, but this was kind of the first time going on my own. Before I had been with friends or family. And so traveling that far was definitely scary for the first time by myself. But it was really incredible. I applied for that residency in my last year of university. We had an assignment where we had to find an opportunity and prepare a portfolio and a application just kind of in preparation for us graduating. And so they said, go out and find something and apply to it. And we're going to grade you based on your application and your portfolio.
Oh,
so
wow.
I ended up, it was a fun assignment because we all kind of got to do our own thing. And so I found this residency and I had heard really good things about it through Instagram and other artists. So I applied for it and I got in for the May 2023. It was just recently. And I was so excited. I was very nervous, but I ended up going. I wrote a grant through the Canada Council, which ended up funding the trip, which was incredible. And just the environment that Ziggy and Beulah, who are the residency directors, the environment that they created for artists was so welcoming and could not be more perfect for someone like me who's very, prone to anxiety. And, it was just a very warm and welcoming environment. And the people who were there with me were all so, just incredible artists, but also just so easy to connect to. And I think that was the best thing that came out of it was the people that I met and the other artists that I met and connected with. And I did not think that was going to be the best part. I went in thinking, I'm going to be painting every single day, 24/7. I'm going to be working late into the night, which of course I did. And I ended up getting lots of painting done, but I kind of underestimated the ability to just really spend time with other artists and people who are doing different things differently than me. There were painters, writers, musicians, printmakers. There was everyone there. So that was the best thing. I ended up painting about 16 small paintings when I was there for 2 weeks. I painted small works so that I could get a lot done in a short amount of time. Like it was 5x7s and 12x12s. So then I could come home and use all that material and use that inspiration to create a bigger body of work. So yeah, Orkvaux, it was absolutely incredible. The location, it's in a small village with like very few residents. It was super quiet.
Oh, that sounds lovely.
It was beautiful. And the chateau, it's held in a chateau, an old chateau, so stunning. Like it could not be a better place.
Chloe, how did you leave?
Oh my gosh, so sad. I left so sad.
Wow.
We have an option for a 2-week or a 4-week residency, and I did 2 weeks. By the end, I was like, why didn't I do 4 weeks? So if anyone wants to apply, do the 4 weeks because you'll regret it.
And so, like, what were your takeaways from this residency? And, I'm curious to hear personally if this residency impacted you personally, and also how it may have changed or shaped the art that you worked on while you were there, or even the work that you're going to do in the future. How did Chloe come back different from this residency?
I really think that, and I said this right when I was finished, I think that the residency really changed me as a person in the sense that I came out with a lot more confidence in myself because I'm just very, I'm a very new artist. I'm very unsure of myself. I'm not the most social. Like, I go out, but not often.
Yeah.
So I think being able to go to a place like this on my own without knowing anyone, as someone who's I love to live in my bubble in my house, and going out there and being able to connect with people so easily, which I don't think I've ever really been able to do before, so easily and so quickly. Like within 2 weeks, I feel like I really knew these people and these people really knew me. And so it kind of gave me a bit of confidence in just, myself and being able to promote my work. And these people really loved my work. And so I was like, that feels amazing that these people I respect also respect me. So I just think being able to build those connections with people had left me feeling much more confident in myself and what I can do. And as for my work, I think it did really change the way I paint. I feel like I haven't really painted interiors too much before now, but I've always felt like they're kind of challenging because of all the angles and the light sources. I felt that they were a challenge, but being in the chateau, the interiors and the interior design of the actual place was so beautiful that I couldn't not paint the interiors. So I think that has definitely been something that I've improved upon since leaving. I have an absolute abundance of reference pictures. I'll probably be painting this place for many, many months.
Amazing.
I just have so much, it was so hard when I was there to pick what I wanted to work on because painting takes time and I couldn't paint everything in 2 weeks, but I just have an endless list of things that I want to get done for this kind of, collection that I'm working on for France.
And so you've been talking a bit about painting the interiors of the chateau. And so you paint with oil. And I'm wondering if you could walk us through your exploration of oil painting techniques like alla prima and wet and wet, and then what draws you to these methods.
I was always very wary to start oil painting. I've only really ever used acrylics and watercolors. So I really only learned to use oils when I was in university. And I'm so grateful because I had 2 amazing painting professors who really taught me how to paint, like really not just kind of like put brush to canvas, but like really teaching me real techniques, what's in your brain onto the canvas without it being muddy, because that's really tough with oil paint is to not create a big muddy mess. I'm very grateful for those painting professors who kind of just walked me through step by step how to do it in very plain terms. But I really started kind of, I don't want to say mastering because I'm not a master of oil paint yet, but kind of, honing my skills in for oil paint was during the summer of 2021, which was the summer before I graduated. I graduated in December of 2021. And in the summer, I was realizing I was graduating soon, and I was like, I need to kick up my skills a little bit and, figure out what I'm going to do after school. So I painted every single day in that summer, just like a small painting. And that was when my skills kind of really started to develop rapidly, because just when you're doing something every day, it's inevitable. You're going to get better. Like people say, you're so talented, but no, if you painted every single day, you would get really good as well. So that was when I really started painting like every single day. And it was really rewarding to see my skills develop so quickly. Like when you're doing it that often, mainly I try to paint with wet paint brush strokes because I just love the freshness of it. Sometimes I do.
Can you explain the wet and wet technique for our listeners who are not overly familiar with the technique?
Oh, yes. So it's just basically painting brush strokes right over top of other brush strokes while they're still wet. So sometimes I use wet and dry, where you're kind of painting one layer, letting it dry, and then going in over top, which does create much cleaner lines because you're not mixing the paints together while they're still wet, because oil can take quite a long time to dry. But I think wet and wet is really nice for me because it keeps the painting in a certain freshness that I like, where you can kind of feel the paintbrush moving through the canvas in a way. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I just love that movement. You can almost see when you can see the movement of a brush stroke. I've always wanted to prioritize like joy in the process, which is very important, obviously. There's always going to be moments when I feel frustrated, but generally I want to enjoy the actual process of painting. And because I think my brain moves pretty quickly from idea to idea, if I was, painting slower or painting wet and dry where you have to wait very long, and I think that the wet and wet technique allows me to kind of move quickly through ideas. I'm not saying that I paint too fast, but it's just a way to keep me moving, I guess, without stopping too much and, having unfinished paintings and, I get bored of them.
I'm curious, how do you know when a painting is finished for you?
Oh my gosh, that is such a tough question. Because I feel like there gets to a point sometimes, especially with larger paintings, where the painting is like technically 75% done, but it gets to a point where I get nervous that I'm going to overwork. Because like I said, I like that kind of freshness where you can kind of feel the brush strokes, and I don't want to overwork it. I feel like it can get a little stale. So that's it's very hard to answer. Usually for small paintings, I can give myself a time limit. Not that I always stick to it, but if I'm doing like an 8x10, I can say, okay, I'm going to work on this for 3 hours. And at the end of 3 hours, if it looks right, I'm going to just put it away.
Oh, okay.
So that way I kind of don't for larger paintings, that's obviously harder to do. If I'm working on something for a couple weeks, that's where it gets a little tough. I usually have to have someone else come into my studio and ask them, do you think this is done? Like, what do you think?
Interesting.
Yeah, because I think larger paintings, if I'm working on them for weeks at a time, it's hard to see it with fresh eyes. So I always like to get someone like my mom or, I don't know, my partner to come in and say, what do you think of this? Does it look done? Or do you think there needs more work? Just sometimes someone else can see that kind of stuff better than you can if you've been staring at it for so long.
That's true. I feel like an outside perspective can sometimes shed different light on what you're working on and maybe just see something a bit differently than you do because you're so into it.
Oh my gosh. Actually, last weekend, I had my partner come in to my studio because I wanted to show him what I was working on. And there was one painting that I was like, oh, this one's finished. Look at it. It's so good. I love it. And he was like, it's great, but there's this like giant line that's completely crooked. I had no idea. And I looked at it and I'm like, oh my God. And it's this painting of like a hutch, like a dresser kind of thing. And so, not that I have to have every line be perfect 90 degrees, but it was this line that was just completely off. And he was like, oh, like, you didn't see that before? And I'm like, no. And obviously, I'm so grateful because now I can fix it pretty easily before I varnish and start showing it. But I had thought that painting was completely done. And he was like, that looks very crooked.
Saved the day.
Yes. I'm like, thank God, because I would have been so mortified if I showed that and then I saw it and then I couldn't unsee it.
So, Chloe, I'd like to switch topics a bit here because you've mentioned that you're fairly new to your professional career as a painter and have just graduated a few years ago. So I'd like if you could share with us, looking back on your art education, which you've mentioned a bit, and the transition into your professional career. What were some of the pivotal moments or lessons that have shaped your path so far?
Yeah, so I went to school at the University of Windsor, where I live. We actually have, when I first started back in 2017, we had a brand new arts facility. It's a converted historical building in our downtown core. So I was very happy to be in this beautiful building. I had a great time during my 4 years. I kind of bounced around between mediums, like I did a lot of film photography and as well as painting and drawing and kind of like some computer art kind of stuff. But I had a really great time. I think when I was in school, I didn't really know what I was going to be doing. When I graduated, I didn't really know that being an artist was an option, I guess. I didn't know that you could I didn't know that career even like really existed. I just I don't know. It never really occurred to me. I just thought, if you're going to be an artist, you have to be a teacher. That was what my perception was. So when I was in school, I took arts because I've always been an artist and I've always loved it. So I was like, I don't really know what I'm going to do. I might as well do something I like. I'll get my BA and then I'll see what I want to do from there. I'm sure I'll figure it out over time. But about halfway through my degree, I realized that I did not want to leave the arts world. I did not want to give it up once I graduated. So that was when I first started kind of realizing like, I need to figure out how to keep myself surrounded by these people and the arts and paintings. And so that was when I first kind of started considering the idea of being a professional artist. That was around the time when I started to really focus on my painting skills, because I was like, if I want to do something with this, I gotta work on it. And during my last year was when, like I said, I applied for this residency, and I also applied for the Artist Project in Toronto, which is a very big art fair. And again, I had no idea what I was doing. It was kind of like I was just fumbling along like month by month. And so when I graduated, it was kind of like I graduated in December, and then at the beginning of January was when I got accepted to Artist Project. And I had no idea what I was doing, but it was an art fair. So I was like very nervous in terms of showing my work for the first time. But I knew that I was kind of prepared because in school, I think one of the most valuable things that I took out of my education was learning how to actually speak about my artwork and speak about my processes in a half decent way. I think that's an incredibly important skill to learn, especially as artists. We need to promote ourselves, and if we want people to connect with our work, we kind of have to explain a little bit about, what we're doing and why we're doing it. And, in art school, you have to have your critiques and you have to stand up in front of the class. And if you didn't know what you were talking about, you would feel very embarrassed, which I did many times. So, and, as someone who is very, like I said, kind of shy, standoffish, I think that was one of the biggest things I took away was like being able to speak about my work in a way that felt okay and felt comfortable. So going into an art fair right out of school, at least I felt a little bit comfortable speaking about my work.
So Speaking about Artist Project, it's on the horizon. It's coming up in April, and I understand you will be participating
Yes.
this year. So, how are you preparing for this significant event, and what themes or messages are you hoping to convey through your new body of work that you'll be showing there?
So the new body of work that I'm going to be showing there, I'm still working on. Still got a little bit of time left.
Yes, you do.
It's mainly encompassing my time in France at my residency. I've finished some larger works of the chateau interiors, some peeks inside the artist studios in Chateau Orquevaux, as well as some smaller works of just the experience of being there. It's kind of just a group. It's a grouping of documenting the experience of staying there for 2 weeks and just how this place kind of creatively inspired people. There's this one painting that I'm going to be showing at Artist Project, and it's of the chateau from the ground. It's a photo that I took looking up at the building, and it was nighttime, so it's very dark and dark blues. But there's one window at the top where there's like a little yellow light on, and that was in the artist studio quarters. So it was an artist who was working late into the night in her studio. And the only kind of light sources in this painting are that little window and then the moon. And it just, it's such a special painting to me. And I can't wait to exhibit it because it really just kind of shows the creativity it brings out in people and how it inspires people, because this artist, she was working late into the night. So it's kind of just little moments like that, I guess, that kind of share the experience. It's lots of interiors, lots of gold and brass kind of accents, which was very fun.
And how are you feeling going into the Artist Project Art Fair this time around? Do you have any expectations for the exhibition?
So this is my third year now. And I think going in this year, I definitely feel more excited than nervous, which I'm happy about, because my first and second year, oh my gosh, I was just an absolute wreck. I was so nervous because, especially going in the first time, like I said, I just graduated like 3 months before. I don't think I had ever shown my work in person other than like in my classes. So going from that, and like the Artist Project, they get like 20,000 visitors a year. Oh my gosh, I was a nervous wreck. And I was so nervous about selling, because that is just, that's very new. You know, it's still very new to me as an artist. And it's probably one of the harder parts. But I was very nervous. And so this year, I think I'm going in having a little more experience just with things like selling, and also, you know, not being so nervous about people's perceptions of me. Which is a big thing. And I think, again, like we were talking about in France in my residency, I think that's something that really helped me with that, just kind of like my confidence and not being worried about the way I'm perceived. Because when you're at an art fair, you're really selling yourself, right? You're sitting in front of the booth and you're, you know, people are coming up to you. And so I think I'm going in with a little bit more excitement instead of nerves, which will be very nice. And I'm also just really excited to see the other artists' work. That show is so incredible. I always feel like so inspired just by the fact that I'm able to show work with this level of artists, because the work there is just, it's absolutely incredible.
I'm hearing throughout us talking the idea of being perceived and how your artwork is perceived. Is that something that you think about often?
I do. I don't like to admit it, but I think it is something that I have to work on a little bit, and that I am working on. And I think that's one of the, like I said, kind of one of the harder things, the things that I struggle with about being an artist is, you know, in order for me to do this full time, I have to put myself out there, right? You have to kind of have to promote yourself. And, you know, that's not come easy to me. And when it comes to Instagram and, you know, marketing, it's you really have to be your own biggest fan, because no one else is going to do it. I got to do it myself.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the harder things, but like I said, it is getting easier over time, but still tough.
You do very well on Instagram. You have a great following. You have a very engaged fan base, I feel. And
thank you so much.
Yeah, Instagram, it plays a huge role in how art is shared and discovered today. So also,
sure.
weaving into, being perceived and having to put yourself out there and how that can be very difficult. Like, how do you then navigate being an artist in the digital age, especially on a social media platform like Instagram?
Yeah, it's Instagram. I feel like as artists, I feel like many people can relate to this when I say it. We have a very complicated relationship. I feel like Instagram specifically, I mean, I guess I'm kind of talking about all social medias, but specifically Instagram, I guess, and TikTok. It's such a blessing because, I think it just makes it so much easier for us to be artists. You think about artists maybe like 20 years ago when Instagram like was barely even a thing, and you had to really physically get your work in a gallery to show, and maybe that had to be in a big city like New York or Toronto or San Francisco, and it had to kind of be physically there for people to see it. Whereas now we kind of have our own space to get our work out there, and it's a blessing because I can live in a smaller city like Windsor, which I love, and still be able to reach audiences like all over. So it's great, but it's also comes with its challenges, obviously, like when it comes to the algorithm, and there's all these rules. You got to post this many times a day. You have to keep the audience engaged. You have to post reels. But I'm like, paintings are like photos. Well, how do I make a video out of a painting? So sometimes you have to be creative with it, but it is tougher because you have that nervousness just around being perceived, and people I know in real life. I'm like, what are they going to think if I post this? Like, it feels weird, but you just kind of have to get over it a little bit, which is something that I kind of had to do early on. Just be like, it doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't mean anything if people think I'm weird, or if, why would she post that painting? It's not very good. But I had one video kind of go a little bit viral. That is what kind of spiked my audience a lot. And when that happened, I was like, wow, it just kind of showed me how powerful social media is, because I had people reaching out. The original of the painting in the video sold within like a day.
Wow.
So it was crazy. It's a very powerful tool if you use it properly and you use it, to your advantage. But you also can't let yourself get caught up in it, I think.
Yeah.
Likes, comments, it really means nothing. And that's why I think exhibiting in person at a show like Artist Project is so rewarding, because you get real life feedback, and it's you don't have to appease an algorithm to get comments or to get, feedback. But when you're exhibiting in person, it's, I think it's very nice versus online.
So Artist Project, which we've been referencing, it's based in Toronto.
Yes.
And this mention of it segues nicely into my next few questions here, which are about, your perspectives on the Canadian art scene as an emerging artist. I'm wondering, what is your viewpoint as an emerging artist? How would you describe the Canadian art scene, and, especially in terms of support and opportunities for new artists?
Honestly, I love living in Windsor. I love where I am because I love being so close to Toronto. The Toronto art scene it's so large and it's so busy, and I feel like there's always stuff going on, but it's also very tight knit, and people, it's so connected. Everything is connected. And, it's just so amazing to connect with people, at Artist Project in Toronto that, maybe I connected with online. And I feel like everyone in Toronto is so welcoming so far that I've, shown with or kind of connected with. So I love being able to, because Windsor is really only a 3-hour drive from Toronto. So I'm able to pop up there whenever I, want to drop off paintings at a gallery or, see a show. It's very close. I can't really speak to, out west, but I know that Toronto is a very big hub. So I love being close to there. And I think that being in Canada it's so incredible for artists because we have so many resources. And I didn't realize this really until my last year of university when they kind of started teaching us about, getting grants and like how to actually, make money and stuff. And, I've gotten a couple grants from the Canada Council of the Arts. They funded my whole trip to France, which was absolutely incredible. They paid for travel fees, they paid for lodging, they paid for supplies. They even paid me an artist fee for the time that I was working in the studio. So that was incredibly helpful. I even got a grant to cover the first year that I exhibited at Artist Project, which made me feel so good as, because it is pricey to participate in these art fairs. And especially as someone who was right out of school, I was like, I don't know if I should do it, but getting the support for that just took such a load off.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just so many opportunities through Canada Council, like provincial, like Ontario Arts Council. I've gotten a couple grants from, and even like at the municipal level, like I know us in Windsor have the Windsor Cultural Heritage Fund, I think it's called, but that's a biannual fee, like fund that you can apply to get funding for your art. So, and I think it's just great to be able to kind of apply for a grant whenever you have something coming up, or it's so accessible. Whereas I know other places, like it's much harder in the States. I don't even know if they have a government sector for arts and culture. Whereas, we have such a great ability to apply. So yeah, I think it's great. And even, just like Canadian companies are so focused on arts. Like there's the John Fluvog shoe company, I'm pretty sure is Canada based, and they have their emerging artist grant that is $10,000 that you can apply to. They do it every year. So just things like that. I'm really grateful to be able to be in Canada and have that many resources.
And how do you think, and reflecting on your experiences so far, how do you feel that the Canadian art community has contributed to your growth and even, let's say, visibility as a new artist?
Oh, definitely especially through Instagram. I think like people are so supportive, and like I said before, we often have a love-hate relationship with Instagram, but like Canadian artists that I connect with that like to share my work or, promote me, and like you kind of build these relationships with people where it's almost like word of mouth, and they'll recommend you for something or like mention your name to someone, and I'll get an email from someone saying, oh hey, this person told me to reach out to you for a commission. And it's so welcoming. And even like I said at Artist Project, people there are so supportive. It's not like people get competitive about sales and the person next to you made a sale and you didn't. It's always very, very welcoming with people. So I'm very grateful to have made so many connections to people in Toronto and kind of, the GTA area, even though I don't even live there.
Yes. So Chloe, we know that you'll be exhibiting at Artist Project in Toronto in April, but I'm wondering if you can tell us more about what's next for you. So as you look to the future, what are some aspirations or even projects that you're excited about?
Yeah, so this is a little bit of a hard question just because like I kind of said before, I tend to worry a lot about the future. And I think when I first started kind of my journey as an independent artist, I kind of told myself, like, I'm going to take this year by year and not worry so much about the future. I mean, I do have larger career goals that are kind of like 5 or 10 years out, but generally I do only try to take things year by year. So for the rest of this year, I have Artist Project, like we said, and then at the end of May, I'm going to be exhibiting some new work different than what I'm exhibiting at Artist Project at Crown and Press Gallery in Hamilton. But it's a new gallery cafe, kind of just opened, I believe, in May of 2023, so fairly recently. Julia Veenstra owns that, who is an amazing artist, mentor, businesswoman. She's incredible. That's her gallery. And I'm going to be showing some new work there at the end of May, as well as kind of like a featured artist. So I'm working on that work. And then after that, I think I'd like to put together a local show in Windsor, where I live, because I've never really shown work here.
Oh, that's great.
So I'd like to kind of put something together, maybe a little bit smaller, low maintenance, but just for people who are kind of in my community and friends and family who aren't going to travel to Toronto to see, my work. So I'd like to put together just a little kind of intimate show for that, hopefully sometime in the summer. And then I feel like after that, I'll probably just be in a phase of applying to things. I go through phases where I just kind of scroll through Akimbo and apply to everything that I see that might fit with me. I'd love to apply to another residency, maybe like somewhere in Greece or somewhere kind of, by the ocean. I don't know. So we don't really know what's happening with me in the next couple of years, but I've got my next year planned out.
And how do you envision your artistic practice evolving, and what directions are you eager to explore next?
I think I'd really love to start painting a little bit larger than I do now. Right now, I don't really go much bigger than like 30 by 30, which is not very big. It's bigger, but it's not very big. I'd love to create like larger paintings like I was doing back in university and have a show of those, because I think painting large and painting small is very, very different, even if you're painting very similar subjects. So I'd really love to try my hand at that, because I think it'd be a challenge. So maybe next year for Artist Project, I will be doing large pieces.
So Chloe, where can our listeners find your work?
So you can find me at my website, which is my name, which is ChloeChlumecky.com. Also my Instagram, which is close.artportfolio. So that's ChLOS_ARTPORTFOLIO.
Chloe, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
I'm glad. Thanks, Chloe.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Artbeat, where the stories of Canadian art come to life. Follow us on Instagram at Artbeat Podcast for exclusive content and previews of what's to come. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to stay updated with our journey through the world of Canadian art. Enjoyed the episode? Leave a review or recommend us to a fellow art enthusiast. Together, let's keep the conversation going and deepen our connection to the diverse world of Canadian art. See you next time.